Hello, everyone. James Wilson here. And today we're going to do election prediction based on several different measures. Right now, we have some data we can actually work with, other than just polling. We talked about mail-in ballots, ballot harvesting, early voting. Not really early voting per se, but ballot harvesting, mail-in ballots, that kind of thing. And we all know, who won 2020 and by how much. And once I got to go through each different state and to kind of let you know what I'm thinking here. I'm a numbers person. I like taking a look at raw data and kind of making a determination based on that. So we are going to do an election prediction based on this early voting data, based on comparing 2024 early voting to 2020. Who's out there early voting, things of that nature. And so let's go back into this map right here. I have made some final predictions. I think this is the way it's going to be. I'm not going to change the 43 states that are already colored in. I am going to predict that it is going to go this way, even though they may have some polling that says, well, Virginia's competitive or Minnesota's competitive. I get that, but I'm not going to change it on my prediction. So we're just really going to focus on these 7 key swing states. And so the Democrats start at 226, the Republicans start at 219. And I think that's going to be their floors. So we'll go ahead and get started with this. So I am going to compare some early voting data now compared to 2020. Kind of compare who voted, how many votes there is out there. Things of that nature to kind of decide on who I think is going to win. So we'll get started with the first state, which is Arizona. Now this is 2024's numbers as of today. Early voting is 1,228,237. That's how many mail-ins and early in-person casted. This is how many that were requested, the mail-in ballots, but these are the actual ones that have been casted. As you can see, it's a 43 to 35, 8-point Republican lead. Now, with the independents, I just have no idea how they're going to go for it or who they're going to vote for it. But what I am basing this off is Republican versus Democrat. I am taking a look at the percentage and see compared 2024 to 2020. So as you can tell, the Republicans do have an 8% edge on this. And when you go to 2020, they only had a 3% edge. And you can tell that these are the requests for mail-in ballots and then mail-in and early person return. So this is actually the number. It's 38 to 35. It's 3%. So this is 3% in 2020, and in 2024, it's 8%. So it went up by 5%. And given the fact that Trump only lost it by 0.3, and the fact that he's up in the polls, makes me feel like that Arizona is going to be a lean Republican state. And let me increase this here, if I can. Okay, I do feel that those numbers make me feel like Arizona is a lean Republican state. I think by those numbers he might win by 2 or 3 points, and so I'm going to move on. But I'm going to say about a 2.5, maybe 3-point win for Donald Trump. Not really sure the exact numbers, but I'm pretty confident in that state based on the numbers. Okay. So now we're going to go to the state of Nevada, because right next to Arizona. And I will tell you this, Nevada, in the state of Nevada, it is mail-in ballots, mainly. There is some in-person voting as well, but we're going to take a look at it and see what's really going on here. Trump did lose by 2.4%. When you look at the mail-in and early ballots return, it's 1.338 million. Democrats did hold a 4% lead with 26% independents. Now it's a lot different now. As you can tell, the request and the casted is similar. It's a 5-point Republican lead. So when you actually look at this is a 9-point swing. I know that abortion's on the ballot. I'm not 100% like, this state could go either way, but based on these numbers alone, makes me suggest that Trump might win by a tilt margin. I'm not 100% sure on this because, as I said, abortion's on the ballot. It could go either way, folks. But right now, I guess I can leave it as a tilt margin. That doesn't mean I'm going to make that prediction on election day. But I am going to move on to the next state, which we'll take a look at the state of Georgia. Okay, so we take a look at the state of Georgia for 2024. You will see that Republicans right now have a 4-point lead in early voting and request. And in 2020, Georgia, Democrats had a 6-point lead. Returned. Okay, so when you look at the returned, I want to take a look at the returned actually. That's an 8-point lead for Democrats, but actually an 8-point lead for Republicans, over 4 million. And when you take a look at this, it's actually 4-point lead with 2.962. So when you actually look at this, the return rate is higher for Republicans in 2020, 4.4 million, okay, mail-in and early voting. And then in this one is 2.962, with Republicans having a slight edge. But I will look at this, and I will say that the mail-in ballots requested is less than 340,000. When you look at this, it's 1.743 million. That's a huge difference. It's over 1 million mail-in ballots less. So even though Republicans dominated this number, the number of mail-in ballot requests is substantially less, even though this is much closer. But I will tell you, the election hasn't started yet, right? So we're going to have more early voting. You're going to have, so my guess is probably, when you're looking at this, probably it will expand a little bit. But I'm not 100% sure. It looks like there's just a lot of early voting going on because you have almost 3 million versus 4 million here. So it looks like more people are coming in person. This is kind of tough, in my opinion, because this is an 8-point lead and this is only a 4-point lead. So I think it just depends on how much more early voting is going to happen. I will give it a tilt Republican. I think it could be very close based on that. As I said, it could go either way, actually. So I'm just going to give this a tilt Republican. I'm not 100% confident in these numbers just because they're so high in Republicans only. Remember, Trump lost it by 0.2, 0.3%, and that was with early voting Republicans with an 8-point lead. So that to me is interesting when you look at the numbers that way. And when you look at this way, it is about a million difference. So there is less, but you still have a whole week left. So I am going to kind of take a look at this more to see exactly what's going on at the end of the day. But the mail-in ballot requested, that's a lot less, and that does make me a little bit more happier. So I'm going to go ahead and move on, but I'm pretty confident in a tilt Republican there based on that. And I'm going to move on to the state of North Carolina. North Carolina, when you take a look at their numbers, I find it very interesting when you compare the two. So let's start with 2020 in North Carolina. Trump did win the state, by the way. So in order for the Democrats to win, they have to do better, right? And I know in North Carolina, there's a lot of old Democrats that voted for Trump that now switched to Republican. I know there's a little bit of that going on. I totally get that. So, maybe it's off by a little bit. I'm not really sure. But right now, when you look at it, 4.6 million with Democrats holding a 5% lead with 31% independent. Now Republicans have the lead with less voting, 2.74 million compared to 4.5. That's a huge difference. That's bigger than Georgia. It seems like Georgia has this coalition going on down there. I'm kind of just thinking that. But just the numbers and just the way the numbers are going here is favoring Republicans big time. It's a 1-point lead versus a 5-point. That's a 6-point shift. And Trump won it last time. So to me, that's more of a lean Republican state. And so that's how I interpret that. And I'm going to move on. Now, we'll say Georgia is very interesting because this is a state that is naturally turning to the left. And there's not a lot of room for error for the Democrats. You have a lot of, African-American males, African-Americans that live down there. And Biden barely won. So it could go in Harris's favor. I know Stacey Abrams lost that race, so I don't really know. But to me, that seems tiltish. So in the state of Wisconsin, when you take a look at the state of Wisconsin, that's the next state I want to go to. And as I said, we're kind of analyzing the data. Georgia, to me, could go either way based on those numbers. But the reason why I'm giving it to Trump is because the mail-in ballot request has been down significantly. So, and when you have less mail-ins, you have less ballot harvesting going on. And they have to show up at the polls. And it looks like they've been doing it. So we'll see what happens. So Georgia. Okay, so this is Georgia. I'm sorry. Let me go to Wisconsin. Okay, so in Wisconsin in 2020, Biden won by 0.6. But in the early voting mail-ins in return, you have almost 1.9 million. Republicans have an 8-point lead. When you go to 2024, it is a lot less, 858,000. So it's 858,000 versus 1 point. So it's about a little over a million. But Democrats have a huge lead. They have a 12-point lead at this point with 42% independent. Now, I think the independent is very interesting because the independents have shifted. So I don't know what's up with that. But when you look at this, it's not good for Donald Trump. When I'm looking at this data, because 8% Republican now versus 12% Democrat. Now, maybe they just opened up their early voting and they had a lot of mail-ins, so maybe that's why. See, this is another state that I'm going to have to take a look at until And as I said, I'll make the prediction the Saturday before the election. The Saturday before the election. So in 5 days, or about 5 days, I will make my final prediction. But at this particular point in time, based on the numbers, I have to give this to maybe a Harris by a tilt, maybe a lean margin based on that. But I'm going to say tilt Harris because there's not a lot of votes out there at this point. And so it just, based on the polling and everything, Trump does lead the polling. So I'm not going to give her a lean margin. Now, if it continues to be like this, I am going to have to give her a lean margin. But at this particular point in time, Trump is losing, and not a whole lot of data at this point, in my opinion. So I'm going to leave it at a lean Democrat. So the next state I want to go with is the state of Michigan. And Michigan was one of those states. It's a swing state. That's the most liberal out of the 7. Biden won it by 2.8%. He won Nevada by 2.4%. So Michigan is the most liberal out of all of them. So we're going to compare the two here. And when you take a look at it, early voting and mail-in ballots returned, this is what I take a look at here. 3.2 million, almost 3.3 million. And Republicans held a 2% lead here, with them losing by 2.8%. When you look at this here, it's dominated by Democrats. Now, as I said, not a whole lot of data, but let's see, 2.45. Okay, so 1.77 returned versus 3.48. So that's double right there. So there's a lot less voting, it seems like. It just seems like the Democrats are just absolutely killing it with the early voting. Is it enough? I'm not really sure, but based on this and the fact that Biden won it by 2.8%, I will give it as a lean Democrat state based on that numbers. And I know that Trump is winning barely by 0.1 or 0.2%. So in the polling, but there is going to be ballot harvesting going on. So right now I'm going to give it to Harris. But as I said, I'll take a look at this on Saturday as well and make a final prediction. And so the last state is the state of Pennsylvania, where Trump lost it by 1.2%. And we're going to take a look at that state. And this is for 2020. So we'll start with 2020. And when you take a look at this state here, you will see the returns is 2.64 million, with Democrats just totally dominating by 41%. Now, please keep in mind that in Pennsylvania, Trump only lost it by 1.2. Okay, so 41 point lead for the Democrats, and with 2.64 that were returned. That's humongous for the Democrats. It tells you a lot of the Republicans voted on election day. Now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Pennsylvania only votes on election day unless it's mail-ins. Well, maybe there is early person voting. I'm not really sure. You let me know. But this is 2020. Now, when you look at this, it's 1.4 casted. So that's it's a little over half. And when you look at this, it's a 30-point lead for Democrats. So based on the numbers, when you look at this, Democrats have a 30-point lead right now, which sounds bad, but when you look at this, before, they had a 41 point lead. So that's 11% different, favoring the Republicans, on top of only having a little bit over half of the votes compared to last time. You see the 1.4 million versus 2.6. So 1.4 and 2.6, that's a difference of 1.2 million. So not only do you have it being more competitive, but you have less voting. So in order for the Democrats to win this thing, they have to come out on election day. And they're going to have to be, because Republicans came out way big on election day because Trump only lost it by 1.2%. So when you look at it that way, okay, you realize that Trump is winning the state. He's winning the polling as well. So when you look at the polling, for example, in the state of Pennsylvania, I know it may be a little bit complicated, but if you think about it, okay, Trump lost by about a point last time. We all know that. On top of Trump losing by a point, he was losing by 41 points on mail-in and early voting returns. On top of that, now it's shrunk to 30 points, and it's a little bit over half of the votes. So that's a huge variance in favor of Trump, and he is leading the polls. He got shot in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. A lot of people in Pennsylvania do believe that he is going to win. And based on that, I will give it a tilt margin. I'm not too confident to give it a I think he'll probably win by a point at the end of the day based on that. I'm just throwing numbers. I know he's going to do better than last time based on those numbers. So, this is kind of like what it's looking like right now. As I said, I'm pretty impressed by Nevada, how their numbers are turning out pretty well. And I'm just going to have to go with the numbers. If Nevada says vote red, then I vote red. But, last time I had him winning Nevada and I was dead wrong. So I don't know. Abortion's on the ballot. So if he does lose Georgia, for example, let's say Georgia, because I'm not really sure about that state. Let's say it does go blue. He still wins in this situation. So, Nevada is very, very important. I know people think that it's not, but it actually kind of is, because if he does lose Georgia, see, I'm confident in North Carolina. Now I'm confident in Arizona. These two states I'm very confident in based on the numbers. And I'm actually pretty confident in Pennsylvania too. Just sheer numbers. It's just we have to get out and vote in Pennsylvania. We have to make sure that we stomp on them on election day. That's the only way to win. And so, yeah, this is what it looks like based on the numbers, based on this data that I have here. Will this be my final outcome? I don't know. I am going to look at all of the states just to see what's going on. This is RCP average right here, 312 to 226. I know this is a popular number here. I just don't know if he can get to 312 with all the bad publicity and everything that's going on. You have a lot of idiots out there, so I don't know if he can get to that 312 mark that everyone's talking about. But right now, this is kind of like what I'm leaning towards. Let me know what you think about this video. Like and subscribe to my channel. Any questions, comments would be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.